Good morning and welcome to the first lesson in our Monsters booklet, our new tool for writing booklet. Now this is only going to be a week long, so it's going to be a lot of work, but it's manageable and hopefully it should end up with a fun piece of writing where you get to create your own monster and become a monster expert. So we're going to start by having a look at Professor Behemoth's Monsterology. Well, world famous monster expert Professor Behemoth is putting together a monsterology of different types of monsters and beasts. He has spent years researching all sorts of weird and wonderful monsters and has a wide variety for his encyclopedia. Your job in this booklet is to provide the professor with another entry for his book. You'll have to use your imagination unless you have actually seen a monster. So, in this workbook, we're going to be writing information text about a made-up monster or beast. Even though this is a non-fiction genre of writing, we can still be inventive and creative. Now, some people might call it faction. So, it's a fictitious fact, really. So, that means the form of the writing fits information about facts, but the facts are actually fiction. A little bit confusing. So here's our text. Swamp monsters. Do you ever wonder what might be lurking in the murky swamps of our world? Rumour has it that the fabled swamp monster is not just a creature mentioned in myth and legend, but it actually exists. Now is your chance to find out all that has been discovered about this unique being. Swamp monsters are rumoured to inhabit the most remote and humid swamps of the Amazon rainforest. Living in total solitude, it is believed that there is, perhaps, only one swamp monster on our planet, making it a mystery how they reproduce. Dr. Patrick Thurston, world-renowned monsterologist from Bristol University, could perhaps be the only living person ever to see this magnificent creature. You cannot believe the pure majesty of the swamp monster. They seem as if they are one with the swamp, living in pure harmony with their habitat. Swamp monsters don't just live in swamps, they resemble them. Being experts in camouflage, they are indistinguishable from their environment. Their bodies are made from this environment, limbs of gnarled branches, incredibly long fingers, and glowing iridescent hair which changes colour to match their mood. The most incredible thing about a swamp monster is that they have translucent breathing tubes, meaning they can stay underwater indefinitely but continue to breathe. Have you ever wondered what a swamp monster eats? Their diet consists of herons, rats, and even alligators, which they hypnotize with their ever-staring, haunting eyes. Transfixed, any animal is helpless till a swamp monster who squeezes the life from them with its lean, powerful limbs. The swamp monster's tongue has the ability to taste the air. This allows it to identify when its prey is close by. If you are now tempted to try and spot a swamp monster, we advise extreme caution. This beautiful but deadly creature should be left in solitude to be studied only by experts trained in monsterology. Sounds like a rather interesting and daunting creature, one I wouldn't want to come across. And I certainly don't think I would survive, especially if it hypnotizes me with its eyes. So we're going to think about the text a little bit now. So I'd like you to think about these questions. What did you think about the text? Did you like it? Did you not? Why or why not? It's okay to have an opinion, but you've got to try and justify that opinion. It's no good just saying, I don't like it. Well, why don't you like it? Or going, I like it, it's really good. Well, why is it really good? And then I want you to think about if the text reminds you of any other text you might have read, does it remind you of any other creatures you might have heard about. And then how does the style of writing help you to know what genre of writing it is? Now we'll come on to that one more in a little bit. So, now you've had a chance to think about it, let's move on. So, as with any new text, it's really important to check that we understand the vocabulary. So you might not know all of it in the model text. Now this activity can help. I want you to match the word with the correct definition and then check at the end of the booklet to see if you have them all right. Well, you don't just have to guess though. If you go back and use the text, find the word in a sentence, it should help you try and understand the meaning. So here's a list of words and definitions. So if we look at the first one, myth, probably one we've heard the most. That doesn't mean not distinguishable, the state of living alone in seclusion, agreement or harmonious relations, displaying lustrous colours like those of a rainbow, a traditional or legendary story. A myth. Is it almost like a traditional or a legendary story? Yes, that's the one. I know that because as soon as I read it, it just made it click. I was just like, yep, I know that one. Okay, so then you might look at translucent. Well, I know what translucent means, luckily, but that's because I've been doing my science. What you need to do is figure out what it means, and if you don't know, check the internet or a dictionary, or even ask a parent to help. So pause the video and complete this task, then press play as soon as you've finished. Excellent, so now you should have finished and hopefully you've matched them all up. You can check on the back of the booklet and check the answers to see whether you got them correct. Hopefully you did, and if you didn't, remember to correct them so that you make those correct links in your head and you match the word to its actual definition. Now, some of these words you could use in your own writing later on because these are very good words, okay? Well, that's a pretty rubbish way of saying it's very good. These are fantastic vocabulary. So now we're going to move on to the next activity, which is what we do in school quite often. It's called boxing up. It's where we pick apart the text and we look for the pattern in it. Now that allows us to help write our own. Okay, so it's just a guide. If you're a really confident writer, you can add in extra paragraphs, different sections, diagrams. There's so much more you can add into yours when you come to writing it. So this is just to give you an idea. So the opening hook is to make the reader interested in finding out more. Fascinating fact. Do you know, for interest? Do you know, so the fascinating fact is about the rumour has it that the fabled swamp monster is not just a creature mentioned in myth and legends, but it actually exists. It hooks the reader straight away with a rhetorical question. We're quite lucky that we don't have many murky swamps around, so hopefully it doesn't live in one of those. So that's the first paragraph. Then we move on to a paragraph describing the habitat. It gives us information about the area that the creature lives in. Okay, see, there we go. It lives in the most remote and humid swamps of the Amazon rainforest. So we're pretty lucky, actually. I don't think it's going to bother us in Wathurst or the surrounding area. So it tells us more about where it lives. It adds in a quote from an expert. Once it finishes that paragraph, it goes on to describe the appearance. Now it describes what the creature looks like, including evidence. Okay, because when you're writing non-fiction text, you need to make it sound believable, so you want to include some evidence. After the appearance, it talks about the diet. Now this is what the creature eats. Okay, it's not saying the creature's on a diet as such, because actually diet refers to the food we eat. Again, it starts with a rhetorical question to hook the reader, and it tells them straight away. But then it tells us how they catch their food, before finally giving us an interesting and random fact, such as the swamp monster's tongue has the ability to taste the air. This allows it to identify when its prey is close by. Then it gives a final paragraph, which is often a concluding paragraph. In this one, it's a warning and a little bit of advice to the reader. Okay, it's warning us not to go trying to find it. Now, I definitely don't think that is something I would like to do. So what we might do next is, well, what we will do next is we look at the writer's toolkit. Now in class we talk about the writer's toolkit. It's almost like a magic potion where all the ingredients come together to make this amazing piece of writing. Okay, now in this text, an information text, okay, You might hook your reader with questions and a top fact to encourage interest. You might use technical and specific vocabulary, translucent, indistinguishable, webbed, iridescent was in there. So there's some of the big words. And they don't have to be big, it's just words that are specific to what you're writing about. And then you might want to sound like an expert, in which you've got to be formal and informative. We're going to learn about that some more in this lesson. You need to interest your reader with fascinating facts, some warning, add a little bit of fear into it. Maybe give some advice. Just make sure it's good advice. Then you're going to organise your ideas. So you're going to organise them into paragraphs. You're going to use topic sentences, adverbials to progress the text. You're going to link across different paragraphs. And then finally, you're going to use some evidence. Well, you might use some evidence, a quotation from an expert, or a topic-based technical vocabulary. So there's a range of ways you can use evidence. Now that's just a quick look back at some of the key features of the text that the author has used to really help you. The toolkit's going to help you write in your own later in the week, because you're going to keep referring back to it. So remember this page, it's a very important page. So on to our actual activity where you are now going to do some learning. Okay, you're going to partake in some. And it's all about formality. So if you're in year 5 and 6, we've talked about formality before. Okay, we've talked about being formal. The best way to explain it in this type of writing is to sound like an expert. So it's almost imagining you're David Attenborough narrating a TV show. Either that or your writing will feature in a non-fiction book from the library. We don't need to make the reader laugh, persuade them, or in fact give any opinion at all. Our main job is to give information as precisely as possible and without all of the flowery language. So we don't need a four paragraphs of description about the tree that it once ate when it was 7. Okay, so we're going to start by looking at these 2 small bits of text, and we're going to discuss which one is formal and which one is informal, so the opposite. So 1. Swamp monsters have a proper rancid diet. They love to eat all sorts of weird and unusual stuff like slugs. Ugh. Also, they glug down the dirty swamp water by the gallon. That's number 1. Number 2. It has been discovered that swamp monsters have an unusual diet. In the main, these creatures are known to consume only gastropods. In addition, they have a preference for water from their swamps as it contains essential minerals. Yeah, hopefully, if you think about formal as sounding like an expert, almost like you talk to the head teacher, like you talk to a very important person. If you were to meet the Queen, it's how you would talk to the Queen. You wouldn't go up to the Queen and go, "You all mate, how you doing?" You'd be very polite and proper. So I think straight away, number 1 gives it away with swamp monsters have a proper rancid diet. You can imagine being on the playground and saying that to your mates almost. "Oh, you'll never guess what, mate. That monster was proper rancid." Yeah, we don't want that. Not in this type of text. So the second one is formal, because it uses higher tier words such as gastropod. It says in addition instead of also. It just sounds that little bit posher, for want of a better term. And just the whole structure, hopefully you can hear the difference. So what we're going to do, this is where you get involved, because what you're going to do is decide whether these are formal or informal sentences. "I really want you to come to my party. Please come." Henry VII didn't like his wife. He chopped off her head. The teacher pleaser machine is a state-of-the-art contraption. Your presence is requested at the Queen's celebration. At 6 p.m. on the 24th December, Mr. Jones was arrested by the police and detained at the local police station. Okay, so I want you to go through each of those and think about whether they're formal or informal. And then once you've done that, you've got your challenge, which is to rewrite each sentence the other way around. So the formal ones become informal and the informal ones become formal. So remember, the formal ones, that's how you would almost talk to the queen, and the informal one is how you will talk to your friends on the playground. Okay, and once you've done that, that's the end of today's lesson. I hope you've enjoyed it, and hope you've enjoyed learning facts about the swamp monster, and I'm looking forward to creating your own monster, which can be as gruesome and as ugly and as hideous as you want. So I can't wait to see some of your ideas. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow.